Hello everyone, back tuning in today's second video, doing GWV Sunday Round Up for today's second video. It can be your usual eclectic mix of this and that for your Sunday afternoon viewing pleasure. So we're going to have a look at sea surface temperature anomalies for the Atlantic and Pacific Ocean. Have a look at ENSO, got some information as far as the QBO is concerned. The latest QBO number is in for June 2018. And as well as all of that, have a look at all of that, we're going to have a look at the weather for next week to 10 days as well. So as going towards the middle part of the month, there is just a few signs that we might begin to turn things a little bit more showering and slightly cooler, but again it's all quite a long way off, and I'm not sure how long it's going to last, even if it does turn a little bit more showery. But I'll bring you up to date with everything that's going on in a second. Just say that today's first video had a look at the weather for the autumn. So we did the third autumn analogues update for today's first video, and you can find that video here on the home page. Just scroll down the page a little bit and it's the bottom count. Later on today, that video will be placed on the autumn updates page. There'll be a written summary that goes with it as well, so have a look at that, see what you think. But we're going to start off the Sunday Roundup by having a look at our latest observations. This is the latest temperature observation chart from XC Weather. Already very warm to hot down in the south, and it's only 11:15 in the morning as I'm recording the video. So down in the south, already got Farnborough up to 26 degrees. Heathrow is up to 26 degrees as well. High Wycombe is at 24. Oxford is at 26. And going north into the Midlands, Church Lawford is at 24 degrees. East Midlands Airport at 24 degrees as well. Nottingham is at 24 degrees too. The highest temperature is 28 degrees going off down there at Bournemouth. So already into the 80s Fahrenheit, and it's only the middle of the morning. There's many more hours to go of warming. So unless it clouds over, and the clouds will bubble up a little bit this afternoon, but unless it clouds over, it is going to be another very, very warm to hot day. Most parts of the country. I think we're going to see temperatures going up to possibly 32 degrees this afternoon in the south. That's 90 in Fahrenheit, so it's going to be another really hot day coming up. And of course, this is the central temperature from Hadley. So you can see we are having a very warm summer. So June CT came out at 16.1, an anomaly of being 2 degrees above average. July currently is standing at 19.7, an anomaly of 4 degrees above average, 4.1 degrees above average, up to the 6th, and I wouldn't expect this to change a great deal over the next few days. I think we'll be keeping the CT on the very high side. So obviously we are having a hot summer at the moment, both in terms of the CT and in terms of the UK-wide figures. But I think the main thing actually is the dryness. It's been a very, very dry summer so far. This is how June's 500 millibar height anomaly chart looks in terms of the reanalysis. So we find that for June we have this big ridge virtually centred over the top of the UK. It also extended out into Europe and also into the Atlantic as well. Below average heights, low pressure up to the north and also to the northeast. So the jet stream has been in that sort of position, or was in that sort of position through June, to the north of the UK and to the far north of Europe, and then going down into western parts of Russia. So West Russia, northern parts of Europe, the far north of Norway, Sweden, Finland. It's always been a little bit cooler, a little bit more unsettled there. But for the UK, we have been under this huge ridge of high pressure that's extended from the Azores right way through to central parts of Europe. This is the analogue we was working with for the summer forecast for June. So we always expected quite an anticyclonic month. We always expected a lot of high pressure above average heights. Again, you see it extending from the Atlantic through to Europe in a slightly different position compared to where it has been. You never get a match-for-match type situation with analogues, but kind of in the same idea as what's happened, really. Jet stream generally going to the north, lots of high pressure around the UK from the Atlantic and going into Europe. That was the top 5 analogues. This was the top 3 analogues for the summer forecast for June. And again, you see very sort of similar idea, above average heights from the UK extending into Northern Europe, below average heights to the north, but jet stream to the north of the country as well. Again, the analogue has the ridges and the troughs in a slightly different position compared to where the troughs and ridges have actually been, but the broad idea is there most definitely, with high pressure influences for the UK and for much of Europe, and the jet stream going off up to the north. So we always expected quite a hot and dry June. This is July in the summer forecast analogue. Top 5 Julys look like that, with above average heights, so high pressure to the west, and below average heights to the east, and the wind coming through rather like that, or the flow going through rather like that. So a rather more, and so not particularly wet month, because actually we're blocking off the Atlantic. So I would have thought a reasonably dry July, but probably more changeable compared to June. And rather cooler, that's the thing that was showing up in our analogues for July. And again, we see it there in terms of the top 3 analogues for July, with the above average heights to the west, below average to the east. I'm not sure whether this is going to come off now. I think that high pressure is going to probably be much more centrally located over the UK and Northern Europe. But of course, we will wait and see how the July analogue plays out. So the June analogue certainly got things off to a good start, but I think now the weather is beginning to deviate from the summer forecast quite a bit. But we shall wait and see how that comes out when we get to the end of the month. Right, so we'll have a look at, let's have a look at solar activity first of all, then we'll do the oceans. So this is how the solar disk is looking on our side of this today from solarham.net. We can see that we've got spotless conditions on the sun at the moment. Solar activity is at very low levels, expected to remain at very low levels for the next 3 days. We haven't got the updated solar tracker for you today. Hopefully that will be back next week. But certainly we are at a very low level of solar activity now. We know we're going rapidly into solar minimum. So let's have a look at the oceans then, in terms of the Atlantic and the Pacific. So this is how the oceans were looking when we did the last Sunday Roundup. Actually, this is how things were looking last week, but of course we left off the Sunday Roundup last week. Haven't done the Sunday Roundup for 2 weeks, actually. So this is how these oceans were looking last week when we didn't do the Gas Weather Vids Sunday Roundup. We did the NAO forecast for the winter of 2018-19, of course, last week. So anyway, this is how things looked, and in the Equatorial Pacific Ocean last week, we find that we've got warmer than average conditions beginning to develop in the eastern part of the Equatorial Pacific Ocean. So certainly an unravelling of the La Nina signature. We find that we're going into a much warmer phase of ENSO. In the northern part of the Pacific Ocean, sea surface temperature anomalies are cooling down up there, or were last week. In the North Atlantic, we still have this very unusual pattern of much cooler up in the northern part of the Atlantic Ocean, much cooler than average sea surface temperature is there. Rather cool through the tropical Atlantic as well, and then warm in the middle. Let's see if we can find the latest. So I think the latest is going to be that one. A bit mixed up with my tabs today. So this is the latest sea surface temperature anomaly chart for the oceans. Very little change on the situation last week. So in the Equatorial Pacific Ocean, we continue to warm up a little bit. I have actually got a little splodge of red appearing there over in the eastern part of the Equatorial Pacific Ocean. That might be the beginnings of a signal for El Nino. We may well be starting to see the Pacific moving towards an El Nino type event, albeit I don't think it'll be a particularly strong one, but we may well be starting to see the beginnings of El Nino in the eastern part of the Equatorial Pacific Ocean. Up in the northern Pacific, so remains quite cool up there, especially over here in this northeastern part of the Equatorial Pacific Ocean, or northwestern part, I should say. Over in the Atlantic, it's rather cold still to the south of Greenland, so cold and average sea surface temperature is there to the south of Greenland. Greenland in the Northern Atlantic. Still remains fairly cool with both sea surface temperature anomalies through the tropical Atlantic as well. And then in between, we have a warmer area through the central part of the North Atlantic Ocean. So kind of like got a cool, warm and then cool type pattern going on in the northern part of the Atlantic Ocean. Very cool sea surface temperature anomalies though to the south of Greenland. They have been in place for several weeks now and continue to be in place there from Greenland down towards Newfoundland. Round the UK, we find that sea surface temperature anomalies are warming up very rapidly through the UK and down to the Bay of Biscay, and also now starting to warm up through the Mediterranean as well. These are shallow waters. They're prone to rapid temperature changes as the weather changes. So they do change very, very quickly, those sea surface temperature anomalies around the UK and the Bay of Biscay and down to there in those shallow waters. And it's represented, what's happening around the UK and Biscay is representative of the hot summer that is currently going on in northern parts of Europe. This is the cold and warm episodes by season chart from NOAA, so that's been updated. This depicts every La Nina and El Nino event going back to 1950. So, for example, in the year of 1950, we see that we did have a La Nina event, a cold event taking place with those blue negative numbers through the early part of the year. The red numbers are depicting El Nino events. For example, in 53, 54, there was quite a weak El Nino event going on through 1953, 1954. We come down to 2018. We know that last month's tri-monthly period officially ended La Nina. We have this number turn up, which is minus 0.4, so that was the official end for the tri-monthly period of March, April, May. That's the official end of the cold event of the La Nina. The latest tri-monthly number to appear is for April, May, June. And we see we are warming things up quite rapidly, actually, through the equatorial Pacific Ocean, because in 3 months we've gone from minus 0.6 degrees as the anomaly to now at minus 0.1. So we're virtually back to ENSO neutral, to be honest. And that's happened in just 3 tri-monthly periods. So quite a rapid rise in temperature taking place as we aim that cold event and possibly start to head towards an El Nino event. Actually, the CFSV2 is beginning to forecast a moderate El Nino. So you can see here from the black dash line that the temperature anomaly forecast now for the central equatorial Pacific Ocean is going up to plus 1.5 degrees above average, up to there at the peak of this event towards the end of the year, November, December. That's moderate El Nino type level. So around a month ago, the CFS was only forecasting a very weak El Nino, sort of borderline at ENSO neutral, to just managing to get to weak El Nino. Now it's going for a moderate El Nino event. No real sign still of a strong El Nino. That would take us up to 2 degrees above average, and no sign of a Super Nino. If you had a Super Nino, that would take us up to 2.5 degrees above average. There's no sign of that, but the forecast is increasing actually with the CFS at the moment. It is going for a moderate El Nino event now. So just go back to the sea surface temperature anomalies in the Atlantic, because we know we've got this very unusual situation going on here across the northern part of the Atlantic Ocean. It is much colder than average with the sea surface temperature anomalies in the northern part of the North Atlantic at the moment. We've gone into a cold AMO type signature, which is this sort of horseshoe shape of cold from the North Atlantic down to the tropics. When you have that signature, but it's kind of like a cold AMO type signature. There has been some speculation that these colder than average sea surface temperature anomalies in the Northern Atlantic might be causing this hot summer, this high pressure dominated summer that we're having at the moment. So I just want to show you the sea surface temperature anomalies from August 1986, because that was a real cold AMO year in 1986. just zoom in a little bit, you can see how cold the sea surface temperature anomalies are in the northern part of the Atlantic from the UK and extending up towards the south of Greenland. And we also have this sort of horseshoe shape of cold again, so the cold anomalies stretch from south Greenland down to the tropical Atlantic, with a warmer area in the middle part of the Atlantic Ocean. This is from a long time ago, so the projection looks very basic and very different to the detailed anomaly maps that we get at the moment. But it's the same sort of signature, actually, that we've had for this year. The summer of 1986 was a very, very bad summer. It started off okay in June, but by August it was a real washout. And we finished up with the remains of Hurricane Charlie, of course, over the bank holiday weekend of 1986. Of course, an absolute washout. But August 1986 was a really cold and wet summer month. This is how the sea surface temperature anomalies looked in our last drought summer. So this is from 1995. This is July 1995. This is the last time we had kind of like the grass just dying off and going brown across the whole of the country. There's barely any rain from June through to the end of August in this summer. It was very similar to 1976. It's actually a slightly drier summer, 1995, than 1976, although 1976 was a hotter summer than 1995. And, of course, in 1995, we didn't have the very severe drought and water restrictions that we had in 76, because the reason 76 was so bad was that it was a 2-year drought. It started at the end of 1974, and it went through to the summer of 1976. The end of 74, the whole of 75, and the first half of the summer of 76 was a continuous dry period. We didn't have that in 1995. Actually, the year before, 1994, was relatively wet. The winter of 94-95 was quite a wet winter as well. So although we did have this summer drought, the water issues weren't as bad, although I think for Yorkshire they were pretty bad, but for most parts of the country, summer 1995 wasn't as bad as 76 for water restrictions. But it was a drought summer. It was our last drought summer, where it barely rained through the whole of the summer. It was very hot as well. This is how the sea surface temperature anomalies looked in the summer of 1995, and we had a tripole in this summer, so a much warmer Atlantic compared to what we've got at the moment. It was warm to the south of Greenland and over towards the UK. We had this colder area here around Newfoundland and going in towards the central part of the Atlantic, and then much warmer again through the tropical Atlantic Ocean. That, of course, caused a very active hurricane season in 1995. So totally different sea surface temperature anomalies in our last drought summer compared to the sea surface temperature anomalies that we've got this year. Again, that's a reminder of sea surface temperature anomalies that we've got this year. And then this is 1976. This is the reanalysis for the sea surface temperature anomalies for the summer of 1976, that drought summer. Now, this has a much colder Atlantic, so in some ways, this is actually more similar to this year. We've got that colder than average area to the south of Greenland and going down towards Newfoundland. The tropical Atlantic also looks quite cold with this reanalysis for the sea surface temperature anomalies for the summer of 1976. Now, we've got this warmer area just here through this middle part of the Atlantic Ocean. So that looks much closer to what we've got at the moment. 1976 was a cold AMO year, of course, whereas 1995 was a warm AMO year. So actually, in terms of what the Atlantic is doing, we're probably quite a lot closer to 1976 at the moment than we are to 1995. But I'm just not sure how much influence this is having, really, because we know that, again, we had a cold Atlantic in 1986, and that was a very poor summer, especially late summer, turned really wet. Had the cold Atlantic, though, North Atlantic in 1976, and that's one of our drought summers. And then the last drought summer, 1995, actually has quite a warm Atlantic. So it doesn't look like there's any discernible pattern to be gained there, to be honest. Summer is a much more variable season than a lot of the other seasons. So many of the drivers that we look at in the winter, for example, they're very important in the winter. Things like ENSO, things like the QBO, sea surface temperature anomalies in the Atlantic, they are important factors in the winter. But in summer, all of these factors appear to be much more variable, and it's just, I think, more than anything, probably just down to luck, really, whether you find yourself stuck under a trough or a ridge through the course of the summer. Obviously, this summer we are stuck under the ridge, so we're having a dry and a hot summer. Let me know what you think via the comments, whether you think the sea surface temperature anomalies in the North Atlantic are having a bearing on this hot summer that we're going through at the moment. This is the QBO, quasi-biennial oscillation. So this is one of the important factors for the winter. In summer, again, the QBO is much less influential. So this is depicting every month's QBO back to 1948. That's the year of 1948 just there. We can go down to the latest year, to 2018. Negative numbers are easterly QBO. So the QBO is kind of like an index that represents the strength of the zonal westerlies, if you like. So when you're in an easterly QBO, the zonal westerlies are weakened. When you're in a westerly QBO, the zonal westerlies are strengthened. So as I say, it's a particularly important factor for the winter, because when the zonal westerlies are strengthened, it tends to go along a westerly QBO. It tends to go along with the chance of a milder Atlantic-driven winter, whereas when the zonal westerlies are weakened and you're in an easterly QBO, that tends to go along with the zonal westerlies being reduced. You can get colder winters then. So we've been in this easterly QBO since the second half of last year. We see all these negative numbers. There we go into 2018, and again the easterly QBO continues. It's still strengthening. So last month's QBO number for June comes out at minus 28.45. So this is a very, very strong easterly QBO that we've got going on there. Let's have a look at those two drought summers of 1995 and 1976. So that's 1995's QBO just there, and we see that actually in 1995 we're in a westerly QBO. So there's no similarity at all from a QBO point of view to this summer to 1995. Got these positive numbers, plus 14, plus 15, plus 11 through the summer months of 1995, telling us it was a westerly QBO summer. So this summer is very different from a QBO perspective compared to 1995. What about 1976? And what was happening in that year is that we start off with a westerly QBO through the first part of 1976, and then through the summer months actually we begin the transition towards an easterly QBO, but it was generally still a westerly QBO summer. So again, from a QBO perspective, this summer is very different to our last two drought summers of 1995 and 1976, which again just shows how random all of this can be when it comes to summer forecasting. All these things are much more important for winter forecasting. They work out much better using things like the QBO, sea surface temperature anomalies, for winter forecasting, but for summer forecasting it's all much more variable. 1989, that was a pretty hot summer, and that was an easterly QBO summer as well. No sign of a westerly QBO starting, by the way. This is from the University of Berlin. So this big white area, that is the easterly QBO. When the westerly QBO begins, and on this chart, westerly QBOs are depicted by these darker areas. When the westerly QBO begins, we'll see it at the top here. We'll see this area starting to go darker, going to a dark grey colour. There's no sign of it at the moment. So this easterly QBO could well carry on even into the autumn. Right, let's do a bit of forecasting then. So these are the GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles the next couple of weeks. The red line here is the 30-year upper air temperature average. Just looking at London very quickly today. So warmer than average at the moment, hot at the moment. Going a little bit cooler over the next few days. So things will freshen up from Tuesday through to Wednesday. We get a couple of cooler days. Next weekend looks like, or the end of the coming week into next weekend, looks like it's going pretty hot once again. And then after that into the second half of July with closer to average, but with a lot of scatter. As far as precipitation is concerned, loads of dry weather up to the coming weekend, and then over the weekend into next week, we do have some rainfall spikes appearing. There's not many of them, but possibly still, as we've been talking about in videos a lot lately, the middle of July possibly gives us a cooler and more, I won't say unsettled, but a slightly more changeable interlude through the middle of July. But just how long that goes on for is still quite uncertain. Temperature anomalies are looking like that's significantly warmer than average again from the 7th through to 15th of July. How often have we been saying this? So much warmer than average temperature anomalies across the UK and Europe in the week ahead, and also much drier than average as well for much of northern and Western Europe. Rinse, repeat with those anomaly charts. This is how the GFS is looking for Wednesday. High pressures building through the country from the Azores up to Scandinavia. You know that when we get this pattern, we are in a very strong ridge, with the ridge from the Atlantic into Northern Europe as well. It will be slightly cooler Tuesday, Wednesday as we bring the air in from off the North Sea, but still very dry. I mean, we are talking about just slightly cooler. Temperatures will still be very warm into the mid-20s Celsius. That's Thursday and Friday, and high pressure continue to have an influence, going a little bit slacker, so we might start to see a few heavy showers or thunderstorms breaking out, most likely in the north and the west. At the same time, though, because we've cut off that slightly cooler supply of air from the North Sea, temperatures will be warming up again. So as we go into next weekend, it's still looking very dry, and temperatures will probably be back into the low 30s Celsius again down in the south next weekend, so turning hot once more by next weekend. Then we go through beyond the middle of the month. This is to the 16th of July, where we're just starting to bring down this slightly cooler and more showery northwesterly flow. So still this idea that as we go into the second half of July, we're possibly turning things a little bit more showery and rather cooler as we go through that period. And then we do actually bring an area of low pressure in off the Atlantic by Friday the 20th of July. We're bringing an actual area of low pressure in from off the Atlantic. It's been a very long time since we've had one of those, but that would bring cloud and outbreaks of rain across the country. But as that clears out of the way, the GFS then wants to start building the Azores high back. So that implies probably just an interruption to the hot and dry weather for around 5 to 7 days, and then probably as we go towards the end of July, we start to move back towards hotter and drier conditions once again. That's all at the very extended range of the GFS, though. This is the ECMWF, and I'm just going to have to pause the video and pop and get the door. Right, door answered, and we'll just conclude the video then. Sorry about that. So we find that for the ECMWF on Wednesday, again, we've got this big ridge from the Atlantic building through the UK and going up to Northern Europe as well. Lots of dry conditions continuing through to the end of the week. It all goes rather slack again towards the end of the week, so that could cause 1 or 2 thundery showers to be sparked off as temperatures begin to lift up again. But essentially, high pressure is still in control right way through to next weekend, so the prolonged dry and warm spell will continue. I think we'll get temperatures back close to 30 degrees down in the south next weekend, so the heat after a cooler couple of days Tuesday and Wednesday, the heat does come back at the end of the week and into next weekend. Then we go off into the extended range. We've got this quite deep area of low pressure just to our west that wants to try and smash this ridge up. Does it force its way through? Well, it kind of does, but not with a great deal of conviction, really. So the low pressure doesn't move all that much. Still at day 10, Wednesday the 18th of July, it's still there to the west of the UK. And we're just bringing in a gentle sort of westerly type flow. So that is a bit cooler. It is a cooler and slightly more showering situation. There's the upper air temperature. You see we are lowering a little bit. We're starting to push away the worst of the heat, if you like. So, again, it's just this idea that we're probably into the second half of July going to go into a more changeable type situation and a rather cooler type situation for a while, but it doesn't look like the Atlantic is coming through with conviction at the moment. I wouldn't be at all surprised if a few days beyond that we didn't start seeing the Azores high ridging back in again. Till we see the Atlantic side gets a month, I think we really have to be quite dubious about how long any Atlantic period is going to last for. But of course, at any point, the jet stream could begin to ramp up. You just never know, really, at this time of the year. And then finally, the GEM. So again, we've got that ridge from the Azores to the UK, up to Scandinavia, covering thousands of miles. We go through into weekend, and we keep very slack conditions going. So it will be very warm again next weekend, and we might spark off a few heavy showers too. And then we go into the extended range. It just starts to turn that little bit more unsettled once again. We begin to re-establish something of a westerly flow, not with any particular conviction, but there is more of a westerly flow returning. And so, as a result, it would be starting to turn, let's not say unsettled, but it would be starting to turn more showery. It would be starting to turn a little bit cooler, and the upper air temperatures are lowering again. I have to emphasise, again, there's no sign of the Atlantic really ramping itself up and the jet stream really coming back. Just a return to a slight Atlantic flow, a rather showery type conditions and a little bit cooler. But as we see from the extended GFS, it isn't long at all beyond that, 18th of July. It's not all that long before the GFS wants to start building the Azores high back in for the final stages of the month. So an interruption, yes, to the heat wave, but probably I don't think it's going to last all that long. But we will see. You never know, as I say, at this time of year. It's very, very variable, and we'll just have to see how it plays out. Right, so extended Sunday Round Up today. Hope you found it interesting and informative, with interruptions from the door and all. Don't forget to check out the autumn analogues that will place on the autumn updates forecast page later on today with a written summary. But that's all for now, and thanks for watching.